Good evening. You're watching the main news on HKIBC. I'm Raymond Yeung. Here are tonight's top stories. A massive crane collapses and crushes containers, killing 3 people and injuring 6. A man who admitted killing his terminally ill wife has been placed on probation. And Britain's new Prime Minister Liz Truss packs a cabinet with loyalists and pledges to transform the country. 3 workers were killed and 6 injured after a tower crane at a construction site in Sao Mau Ping collapsed. Experts are trying to determine what happened, as the crane was not lifting heavy objects at the time. Macy Mock reports.
Tragedy struck a construction site in Sao Mau Ping this morning when a 10-meter tall tower crane collapsed, crushing 6 containers and injuring workers inside. Authorities said the crane was not lifting heavy objects at the time, although it did carry a hefty load a little earlier. Firefighters combed through the wreckage on Anderson Road for survivors. 1 worker was trapped near the base of the crane for around 7 hours. He was dead when he was pulled out. Another worker who suffered bone fractures in the head was certified dead by medics at the scene. A 3rd person was rushed to United Christian Hospital in Kwun Tong, but died shortly afterwards. 2 people were seriously hurt and 4 were slightly injured. One of the injured was the crane supervisor. While investigations into the collapse got underway, one of the 2 metal bases that secured the crane to the ground was seen to be detached, while another part snapped. This construction worker said he knew that something terrible had happened when he heard a loud noise. He was then told by a manager to leave the site. The man said workers stored clothes and ate inside the containers. Macy Mock, HKIBC.
A citywide inspection of tower cranes was ordered following the tragedy.
For all the tower cranes, its design, construction, operation is all subject to legal restrictions. So we are going to look into all the records, certificates issued and signed by recognized persons. So this will form part and parcel of our investigation into this very serious, fatal industrial accident.
Sun suspects the crane collapsed because of a problem at its base. 2 other cranes at the site on Anderson Road were told to stop operating. The Housing Society is building 1,400 flats on the plot, and they would be ready by 2025. The Society is offering $300,000 each to the families of the workers killed, and $100,000 each for the injured. COVID infections in Hong Kong have surpassed 10,000 again, a day after dropping to a 1-week low. Only 164 of today's 10,194 cases were imported. The number of fatalities at 16 was in double digits once more. More infections were discovered in the wards of Siu Lam, Tuen Mun and Cheung Kwan O hospitals. Health officials also suspect an outbreak at Malvern College in Tai Po. Cases were detected in 3/4 of the 26 classes, with 30 students and 5 staff members falling ill. The school was ordered to suspend classes for 1 week. A man who gave up his job to look after his terminally ill wife has been placed on probation after admitting that he killed her. A social worker said such a tragedy could be averted if people in severe pain get palliative care. Janice Low reports.
Retired electrician Kwok Wai-yin has been placed on probation for a year after admitting that he had killed his terminally ill wife, who suffered from lung cancer. Kwok was originally charged with murder. but the charge was amended to manslaughter due to diminished responsibility as he suffered from serious depression. The 58-year-old had placed a pot of burning charcoal in his wife's bedroom after she fell asleep 2 years ago in their home in Apleichau. Kwok left his job to look after his 54-year-old wife after she was diagnosed with late-stage cancer in 2018. 2 years later, a doctor said the woman could not be cured and her condition would worsen in 2 months. The night before her death, Kwok's wife gave him permission to help her along what she called her last journey. They had been married for 30 years. High Court Judge Albert Wong described the case as a tragedy, as the defendant himself was also a victim and only wanted to let his wife die peacefully. As Kwok had been remanded for over 2 years, the judge decided a probation order was the best option after taking into consideration public interest and the special circumstances of the case. It's not the first time that such a tragedy has happened in Hong Kong. In 2017, an 80-year-old was jailed for 2 years for choking his wife, who had suffered a stroke. Clinical social worker Francis Wong called for the provision of palliative care, such as addressing the psychological needs of both parties.
I talked to patients who had suicidal thoughts, and they explained that they want no suffering more than just asking for death. They just see no other way to end the suffering, so they thought of how to end their life.
Wong, a member of the Society for the Promotion of Hospice Care, said palliative care could reduce suicidal thoughts if those in pain felt their suffering was being addressed. Janice Low, HKIBC.
A man who was among a white-clad mob that stormed Yuen Long Station 3 years ago has been found guilty of rioting and wounding. Deputy District Judge Newman Wong said video footage and photos proved that Cheng Wai-ming entered the station on the night of July 21, 2019. A few minutes later, the 63-year-old was seen joining men dressed in white shirts and assaulting people, at least 3 people. Cheng also told other men to head to the platform and attack commuters in a stranded train. He is the 8th person convicted for the attack and will be sentenced next month. The head of the Journalists Association has been arrested while on duty. Veteran newsman Ronson Chan, who is now with online outlet Channel C, was reportedly covering a property owners' meeting in Mongkok. He was allegedly detained for obstructing police and disorderly conduct in public. Reports suggest he was stopped by officers for an ID card inspection. Chan is due to leave for Britain later this month to attend a fellowship program at the University of Oxford. Overseas, Britain's new Prime Minister Liz Truss has pledged to build what she calls an aspiration nation. The Conservative Party leader also promised to tackle pressing problems, but admitted that it will be tough. Winner Wong reports.
Members of Britain's new cabinet met for the first time this morning to start dealing with the country's litany of woes. Newly minted Prime Minister Liz Truss earlier lost no time in meeting the press outside her new official residence. She promised to address inflation, healthcare, and the energy crisis.
Now is the time to tackle the issues that are holding Britain back. Of course, it won't be easy, but we can do it. We will transform Britain into an aspiration nation with high-paying jobs, safe streets, and where everyone, everywhere has the opportunities they deserve.
Truss had earlier flown to Scotland, where Queen Elizabeth officially invited her to succeed Boris Johnson. The new cabinet, packed with Truss loyalists, was then unveiled. Kwasi Kwarteng was appointed Chancellor, in charge of the country's purse strings, while Therese Coffey became Health Chief and Deputy Prime Minister. Suella Braverman is the new Home Secretary. Truss, who strikes a tough stance against China, appointed the like-minded James Cleverly as Foreign Secretary. Asked whether Beijing will congratulate Truss, Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Mao Ning said China will do so in accordance with diplomatic practices. She added Beijing hopes Britain can work with China to further develop relations based on respect and mutual benefit. Winna Wang, HKIBC.
At least 14 people have been killed in a karaoke parlor fire in Vietnam. Flames engulfed the four-story venue after the fire started on the upper floor late last night. Many of those who died were trapped inside the building near Ho Chi Minh City. 4 people who jumped from the 4th floor survived with injuries. China's export growth slowed significantly last month as surging inflation overseas curtailed demand, while COVID lockdowns and heat waves disrupted production on the mainland. The weak performance is expected to hurt the yuan, which is already at a 2-year low against the US dollar. Chloe Feng reports.
After a surprising performance in July, China's exports last month slowed down significantly. Exports grew by 7.1% from August last year to $315 billion, compared with an 18% expansion in July. The weaker performance was attributed to a sharp rise in overseas inflation, which dampened demand. On the domestic front, COVID shutdowns and heat waves disrupted production and supply chains in key manufacturing hubs. Imports, meanwhile, rose by a tepid 0.3% year-on-year to $235 billion, compared with 2.3% in July. Beijing's trade surplus narrowed to $79 billion, about 20% lower than the all-time high of $101 billion in July. Across regions, China's exports to Russia rose by 26%, while imports from its neighbor surged 60%. Exports to Taiwan contracted for the first time in 2 years. The trade figures, which were below market expectations, could put further pressure on the yuan, which is on the verge of breaching the key threshold of 7 to the US dollar. Chloe Feng, HKIBC.
Now let's take a look at the markets. The Hang Seng ended the day down by 158 points. To the top 10 active stocks, Tencent was down $2.60, while Alibaba was down 65 cents. Koolearn was down $3.65, while Kuaishou Technology was down $2.65. To the forex trading against the Hong Kong dollar, the euro's at 7.75, pound sterling at 8.96, while the Australian dollar at 5.26. Over in Europe, the London FTSE is currently down by 64 points. On to the weather now. Showers tomorrow morning will give way to bright periods later. Temperatures will range between 27 and 31 degrees. The sun is expected to return this weekend. Now let's take a look at the weather around the world. That's our main news for Wednesday night. Join us for more news at 11. I'm Raymond Yeung. Thanks for watching. Good night.